poetry, good poetry should make you think, not only it should make you think and make you, help you to connect with whatever is being read or whatever the poet is writing, but first and foremost, it should make you think, it should make you think and reflect on life, on life in general and the world in general, I think that's very important because we are feeding our minds at the end of the day, and you be careful, what you feed your mind also, so I
Yeah.
think poetry, it's a learning process because I'm also, when I'm reading some poetry, I'm also learning, I'm getting some new
Yeah.
insight about something, so I
Yeah.
think that is very important, what you're feeding your mind. I think that you have to be mindful of what you're feeding your mind.
Yeah. Exactly. And with social media, like now, I think we have to be very careful with what we're feeding our minds. You're so right. Because if we don't regulate the social media, what comes to us on a daily basis, it can impact so much, right? It does, influence us in big ways mentally.
My name is Saweinii Lalu. I am from Shillong, which is small town in the state of Meghalaya, India, in the northeastern region of India. And I am currently a research scholar at the Northeastern Hill University.
I have known Saweinii since a very long time, like I think almost 5, 6 years now, since college. Poet is a beautiful poet who's been writing for a very long time. So how long, when was the first time you wrote your poem? How long have you been writing poetry?
Well, the first poem that I submitted to a magazine was a school magazine, and that was in class when I was in the seventh grade. And I've always loved writing, I don't remember exactly when I started writing poetry, okay, but I think from when I was a child, I was always writing something, stories or small poems. And but then that was the official, that was the sort of very vivid memory that I have of when I actually wrote something and I submitted it to someone. And it was a poem about my friends, which is a very simple poem about how I appreciate my friends, I love my friends. And I was so happy when I saw it being published in the school magazine. And I think that sense of, that happiness that I got from it, I think that's, I thought to myself, oh, maybe I should continue doing this because I enjoy doing it. So I think that was when it officially began. I still feel like, I'm not there yet. I still have so much to learn, and I'm always hesitant. I don't know if that's the case with you, but I'm always hesitant to, label myself as a poet or a writer or any sort of artist. I don't know. I feel like I still have so much to learn, and that label, that tag, I still have to, much to do to earn it. So that's
I think I think every creator, like a person who really creates for, inspired for willing to create, talks like the way you have, because an artist is never satisfied and
yeah,
it's like reluctant to label themselves, because yes, like even I feel the same. To label myself a poet, an author, a writer, it doesn't sometimes feel like, it feels like maybe I'm just bluffing, am I really?
yeah,
But then, when there comes a time when you have to, because it's just when it becomes your profession, maybe, and you have to, use those definitions, because it just adds, like, it's your identity eventually. Like, how would you identify yourself? That's what I feel in my case. And but in your case, I completely, relate to what you've said. Like, it's never enough. Like, as an artist, I think, that drive, like maybe I need to do better. I need to, learn so much more. And that is what drives and makes a great artist. And I don't mean it because I'm flattering you, but it's actually true. And yeah.
yeah. I think, yeah, that's
Yes.
I have I mean, I'm lucky that my friend circle, most of them like you, they are artists or they are creators in one way or another. And I think we all share this common, like you said, this common feeling of, feeling not enough, or there's still so much I can do. And we're always plagued by this sense of, like, oh my gosh, like when you look at someone else and you think, oh my God, that's so good, that self-doubt and comparison, it's always there. And even when you try so hard not to do it, but at this, it's always there. It's human nature, to feel like,
It is.
you still have a lot to improve on, So, I mean, when we have this conversation with like-minded people, I feel like, okay, I feel I'm not the only one, People, they do feel this way, and it's a nice feeling to share it with someone.
Yeah, truly. And comparison and always like if it's like if you achieve one step and then it's like, okay, I should be there. But sometimes, looking back helps. Like I subscribe to Steve Jobs when he says that we can only connect the dots looking backwards. Because it's true. Like you can't like it's we don't realize sometimes how far we have come. I think it's a good thing and a bad thing at the same time because it's like, we're never satisfied and we don't feel enough, but also this drives us and makes us better at our craft, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And
Yeah,
you know, even for me personally, the only way the only consolation that I have is when I look back, like you said, and the journey that I've been on, and how when I look at my old works, for instance, I see the maturity there, and that's like what you said. That's what, you know reassures me that, okay, I'm improving, and I'm doing something, you know, I'm improving
yeah.
on my art. So, I mean, that's the consolation that I take, and you know, that's how I get by.
Also do create art, right? And you have such beautiful illustrations. So, like, yeah. So, are you more of a poet or an artist? Like, what is your favorite thing?
Sometimes when I can't write, then I draw. Sometimes when I can't draw,
Okay.
then I write. It's For me, it's more of, I need to express myself in one way or another, and these two mediums have been, I have grown up, either drawing or writing. And in school we would have this anime club, and it was we had different
Yeah.
clubs, and like-minded people, we would form this
Yeah.
club where we discuss about the latest anime or cartoon. That was in school, when so we would have this club, and we would draw, inspire each other to draw. And so drawing is also very much a part of me, even though you know I've taken more time to improve on my writing. But during the pandemic, I took time out to to take art classes. So, and I had to start with from scratch. I had to sit in a class with nursery students, kindergarten. And it was so nice because I learned from them also. I learned from them, and I realized that, for anything we do, we sometimes you have to start from scratch, and so, like, going back to your question, I don't think I can separate the two, because my poetry and my illustrations, they go hand in hand. Sometimes the art speaks for the poem or enhances the poem. Sometimes it's the other way around.
What subjects do you find yourself most drawn to, when you're writing poetry and or creating art?
um well, my poems, I mean, they're mostly psychological. So I don't know. I think sometimes, because I'm expressing what is in my mind, so I find that sometimes people, the general crowd, they find it hard to understand or make sense, because you really have to dissect. Unless you have experienced that, that similar emotion, then only I feel like sometimes people can connect. And so there's always that frustration of, trying to express my emotions, my psychological thought processes. But sometimes, how do I connect with the reader? And also, because I'm a literature student, so I'm mostly inspired by modernist poetry, even paintings, and even prose, Virginia Woolf, and James Joyce. So the stream of consciousness, basically going back to the psychological thought processes. So and also I'm also very much I think I'm very much influenced by nature writings, and I think that is very much because of where I'm from. Um, Meghalaya is known as the abode of the clouds, and it's so green here, and so yeah, I guess that's what mostly inspires my writing. And also when I listen to people's stories, I think sometimes people can inspire you so much with the way they live their life, or their experiences, when you have conversations and you think, oh, this is a very interesting story. You can always, like, that's that you get material from anywhere and everywhere. So I think that's the good thing of being a creator, a writer, an artist. I think your sources come from different, you have different sources for your material.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I like to look at it like as a writer who is traveling through Earth or something. Like that's the Earthling
Yeah,
concept, what you say. It's so like true. This is why I believe in this because, like you said, whether it's talking to other people, the natural world, your life experiences, what you read, all of it, like, or it's like where somewhere down the line, we absorb everything and it comes out, inspires us, to create, eventually comes out in our creation. Right. So, what is the part of your entire creative process, whether it's poetry, writing, that you love the most?
Um, what do I like the most? I think the writing process, because sometimes I would have like these ideas in my head and they would not leave me sometimes until I put it down on paper.
Yeah.
And so I like to watch how these ideas come to life on paper, and how they take shape. Sometimes I'll have an idea, and when I write it down, it's like, oh, okay, I can write this down. It is in my head, but it is coming to life. It's the process of writing. I think that is I mean, that is also the most difficult, because you have for me personally, I have to be careful with I'm choosy with the words that I use, and the technicality, like I said, of all of it. And because I write in a particular way, like I said, my poetry is more it's more of reading and sitting and reading it. It's not meant to be, most of my poetry, it's not meant to be read out loud. So you have to think, what like I like my reader to think, what am I writing? It's like a jigsaw puzzle. So I like to set up these different jigsaw
Yeah.
puzzles in the poem. So I think the process of creating itself, it's that is the most fulfilling, and watching it come to life. And yeah. So what about
I think
you?
this was more it. Me, part of the creative process that I love most, again, is that the creation process. Like when you have the idea, I feel the poem coming sometimes, and then the process of creating it, not before, not after, the moment when I'm putting words in the paper and
Yeah.
it's just coming, it's just happening, it's happening in real time, that feeling. And sometimes even later when I'm reading the piece and I feel that same okay, this is how creating it felt, that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree. What you said, that
And
same bit.
like,
Yeah.
when you look back at the whatever you're writing, sometimes for me, I'm thinking, how did I create that? Like, because at that
Yeah.
moment you're so engrossed in the creating process. So when you look back at it, you wonder, like, I don't know if it happens to you also, but you wonder, how
It
did that
happens.
happen? you know so
Yeah.
that's also like what you said, it's interesting to look back at it, and you know just, and like, just really enjoy, like, what is out there already, and relive sort of that moment and think about how did that happen. So yeah.
I feel it more with my books, like my book Morning, which was recently there, and I look back. I don't know, like when and I see like it was a almost 2 lakh words, no, 2.9 or something. And I'm like, how did this happen? You end up wondering what mindset was I in back then when I was creating it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Do you also struggle with writer's block? And how do you deal with it?
Gosh, it is so bad sometimes. I recently like had a very bad, experience with that. For months, I was not able to write, and I sat down one day with my professor and I asked him. I said, "Sir, do you also experience writer's block?" And he said, "Of course, every creative person, even an artist, suffers that." And he says, then I asked him, I said, what's the solution? Because sometimes it can be so frustrating because when you are on that habit, when you have that habit of writing and it's so very much a part of you, and when suddenly you can't do that, you just can't express yourself in any way, shape, or form. It's very frustrating. So I asked him, and he said that the only solution for him is to read during that phase, when you can't write, you read, you gain more information, you learn more at that time. So I'm trying to inculcate that also into my lifestyle, to read more, especially in times when I can't write. When I feel like I can't even think properly, I try to read. And this is where drawing comes in handy, because sometimes when I have writer's block, I would be drawing. I would try to
Yeah.
paint. And sometimes when I can't write, I would be painting and drawing all the time. And sometimes when I can't draw, I would be writing endlessly. So
All the
there's
time.
also that case.
Yeah.
So I always have, like, I'm glad that I have my illustrations also to lean back on during those times, when I can't read, when I can't write. So I think drawing, it helps me sometimes.
Yeah. And whatever form of expression you feel the most inspired at the moment or easiest at the moment, you pursue that. And I think
Exactly.
that is also the part of the process. Like, it sometimes I feel writer's block is important because it, like you said, like your professor said, it takes time to read. Sometimes when we're creating and we keep creating and then we forget to, say reflect sometimes or even read. And I think a writer's block is a time which gives us a downtime. Like, we need the darkness to see the light kind of where we begin to
Exactly.
appreciate more or, sharpen our skills more. So,
Exactly.
yeah,
And also, I
yeah,
feel like traveling also helps me. Traveling to new
yeah,
places, when you can always find inspiration through experience also. So I think traveling helps, because sometimes, like you said, you need that break. You need to clear out your
yeah,
mind. And so instead of, it's a learning process for me. Instead of looking at it only in terms of, oh my gosh, I need to get back, to my writing. I try to, take a deep breath and just accept the process, that, okay, it's not working out. I don't resist it, just accept the fact that it's not working out. And maybe this is the time for me to reflect on things, like you said, reflect and, um, learn in another way. Sometimes you need to take a break
yeah,
also to charge and come back, writing better and or expressing yourself in a better way. So, yeah,
yeah.
like you said, it's important.
So, what are you doing your research on, Samini?
I'm currently working on the female poets from the Northeast, and
Wow.
particularly exploring the role of, rootedness, and how rootedness to one's land is very important in sort of anchoring the person's identity, and especially in the context of the modern world. So basically that, yeah.
The country's national literature, we hardly talk about artists from the Northeast and less so women artists from the Northeast, poets especially, right? So what,
Um,
like, if you, yeah,
I think now they are gaining more recognition, with more research going into it, unlike maybe like 30, 20 years ago. But now there are more writers coming up, and it's good that more research is being done into these writers. because on the larger scale, like you said, they're not very well known. And in most anthologies also, rarely you find, these female poets or the poets in general from this region. But then in the recent years, I think this is starting to change, and people from this part of the country, they are gaining more recognition. And so that's why I wanted to also do my research on these people, like these writers, because I feel like, I can work on. I've been studying all my life about writers not from my own region, and I realized in my masters that I didn't know much about literature from my own place and from my, the people from here. So I decided, like, no, this will not do. I have to know something about my own culture. It's more of a, it's more of me trying to reconnect with, with my identity and, the tradition that I grew up in, but I often took for granted. So yeah, in recent years, I think this is gaining more recognition, like, the writers from this region, which is good.
Because it's really inspiring first what you're doing, because it's such an unconventional career path as well. And at the same time, you are, like you said, reconnecting to your roots, which is like it's a very beautiful thing to do. Like you're trying to find your identity and at the same time doing what you love. So like because like this podcast is about being an earthling. So I'll give a brief idea what is it about. It's like I believe that we are on this planet briefly, and while we are here in this life on Earth, the trip, we are like travelers. So what happens when we travel? We are always taking the best a place has to offer. We are letting the journey inspire us, and I have realized a lot of us, when we are inspired by our journey, which is our life on Earth, to create. So that comes down to doing what we love. But we live in a society where, pursuing our passion and choosing a career which we love, sometimes mostly unconventional. Like it's not really a smooth path. It's a road less taken. So, like for you, this is something I wanted to know. Like, how important is it to live a life you love and do something you love, even if it's unconventional career choice? Like, would you rather than go for some standard idea of success? Okay, this is a success. It's because often unconventional career choices are not seemed very successful initially. So, what according to you, how important is it to do that?
I think for me, I would have to thank my parents for this, because my parents have never really forced me to choose a specific career path. Of course, they would have talks with me about, they would want me to become a doctor or, go into administration. But at the end of the day, they allowed me to choose what I wanted to do. And I think that's being instilled in me from a very young age. I think it really shaped the way I grew up also, because when for my high school, I chose the art stream, not the science stream, and there was a bit of a discussion in the family, and initially my parents found it hard to to accept that I was choosing arts. There's this thing in our society where if you choose a humanities or the art stream, you are you're wasting a life, you will end up nowhere. And this was the risk that I wanted to take, because I realized that I love literature, I love the humanities subjects, I love history, I love political science, and I didn't want to compromise that. For me, learning was more important. Learning I wanted to learn more, about these subjects. So that's when I began on this journey, choosing humanities over the science, and I'm glad that sometimes I would look back and think, oh, my life would have been different if I was if I was a doctor, or if I was an administrator, or it's human nature to think about the path that could have been. So, but for me, at the end of the day, what I realized, and one important thing that I've always followed is, I have to have interest in what I do. Otherwise, I will not be able to stay there for long. I will not last a single day in any career that I'm not interested in. And even I would speak to my parents and they will not understand, they won't, because it's completely new thing, even for them also. They will not understand. There's a generation gap. But they try to understand. They try to, as much as they can, they try to, be there for me and try to understand in whatever way they can, what I'm doing also. And I understand that, they may not always fully comprehend what I'm doing, but that is enough for me, for them to support. And like I said, interest, you have to be interested in what you do. Because at the end of the day, if you're working in a 9 to 5 job, and I've met many, people who have also, showed me the other side, of what life could have been also. They chose a career path that, the society pressured them into going, working a 9 to 5 job, sometimes 9 to 8 job. And, they would get a huge salary, so to say, but at the end of the day, they were not happy with their life. And so I've met friends who have given up jobs. They left their jobs and they followed. Finally, it's never too late to follow what you are truly interested in. So that sort of reassures me that, okay, just do what you like in life. And if you do anything, I believe that if you do anything and if you are truly interested in it, you'll always have fun and you'll always enjoy what you're doing. Salary, you can think about that later. Money will always come, but as long as you work. But it has to be something that that your heart is content with. I feel like having that peace of mind is very important.
Yeah, I can relate to everything you said. Like when you mention about like how if you like you have to be interested in something you're doing. If you don't, you will not last. I completely, that's exactly how even with me, like if I don't like something, I cannot do it. And I have forced myself into jobs just because, but because I'm supposed to do that. But then I've left it because, eventually you realize this is not who I am. And until you know, don't choose what you like, it won't let you be. And it's really inspiring for me to know that you are also doing what you love. And it just, like you said, we're inspiring each other, by,
Yeah.
following our calling respectively. Literature and the power of it has such a big impact, on the receiver. And like similarly, I kept thinking like, can poetry really make an impact? Like, can poetry, change the world? What do you think?
This is it's very interesting that you're asking me this question, because this is a question that I've been asking myself a lot recently. Where do you draw a line between uh, pure literature, fiction, and activism? You know, and I asked my professor recently about this, and the answer he gave me was that a poet can't really, be an activist, because you know they draw a line there. And that answer, it didn't really resonate so well with me, because I feel like what's the point of writing poetry sometimes when only a select few can understand it? Only a very erudite or very literary students who are trained in reading poetry, for instance. I'm talking especially for poetry, because poetry, there's a lot of technicality towards writing it. So sometimes, lately I've been asking myself this question, like, what's the point of writing poetry when only select readers or very close, exclusive group can understand it? So, you know, I'm still trying to find the answer to that one. Where do you draw the line, and how much, how do you compartmentalize that? Should you compartmentalize, you know, uh, yourself being a poet and an activist at the same time? So um I don't know, but I think poetry can change the world, because when we look at I'll take the instance of the poets from this region. And if you look at the poetry of Kinpham Singh Nongkanri, who is my professor currently, and Tamsula Au, and you know, they have spoken about the issues that this part of the world, this part of India faces, and the discrimination that the people have faced for a very long time. And sometimes I feel I maybe could, I'm just trying to I'm trying to
Articulate,
understand
yeah,
and answer my own
yeah,
your question as well as my question. So I think,
yeah,
when I look at their poetry, you will see how they tell the stories of their people. They tell the stories of their people, and maybe it's for a very exclusive group, but still you're telling it to someone, and that someone maybe will be telling it to someone else. Maybe someone from another part of India will be reading their poetry and understand the culture better. But then again, okay, that's a positive thing about poetry, because it's fiction, and sometimes not fiction, also non-fictional. But the point I'm trying to arrive at is the fact that, poetry, because it's very compact, very condensed, so you're able to convey a lot within that limited space. So that's one good thing about it, because you can communicate social issues, for instance, through poetry. But once again, the question is, what about the normal, ordinary person who doesn't read literature, or who would not pick up a book? Now, especially in the current generation, we are very reluctant to read. So then
yeah,
again, the question is, who is reading that? Who are you writing for? The common man, will he
yeah.
read it? Will he or she read it?
Mm-hmm.
So, because at the end of the day, it's the common man who's mostly affected by whatever changes are happening in society. And so, if they are not fully aware of what's going on, then stereotypes will continue to be there, and discrimination will continue to be there, because at the end of the day, they are not reading your poetry. So I think that is
Mm-hmm.
still something that I'm still trying to understand, and it's still something that I'm trying to get an answer for.
I felt like my experience with the particular thought process was a little different. Like I felt like, for example, when the pandemic happened, a lot of people who didn't write before or took a break from writing or even in all sorts of art forms, they actually turned a lot towards the creative side of their life, because it's like there was this impending doom, and they held on to creativity to escape from what was happening. And a lot of people also started writing poetry. So I say this because I myself stopped writing poetry for some time. And then when the pandemic happened, my own realization was, what am I doing with my life if I'm not writing and creating? And because that's who I am as a person. I'm a creative person. And then I started writing poetry, and I started an Instagram page, and I met literally every other person was talking, had a similar thought process. They were like, even I did not write poetry for a long time, but the pandemic, forced me to come back to my, origins as a poet or writer, because I mostly interact with poets. So I'm talking about poets, but there were other people, indulging in art, and who were not like, if some of you, for example, if you were pursuing it like, as a career, but a lot other people were not. So I felt like, even if they were not like, say, the like they were not seasoned poets, but at the same time poetry for them was a means of expression and a sense of healing. So I felt like, when I say, can poetry save lives or poetry save the world, I felt like it was more personal, in a sense. If I'm writing it, I feel uplifted, so I'm getting saved by writing poetry, the act of writing poetry. And I found a lot of people who I interact with on a daily basis, they often write for themselves. And it's like, I'm saying this because I asked them the question, who do you write for? And they're like, I write for myself. And it's like, I'm just putting it on Instagram, and then I'll be like, whoever gets it gets it. That's actually quite like it initially, when when you're putting your work, like you say, you're putting your work out there, and it sounds like, what if not everybody gets it? And it's true. Like, my own friend circle, like you relate to, I'm sure, every day, who does not read poetry or who does not like, they're not interested probably, or they have some other interest, they will not get it. Like, why writing poetry suddenly? But then there are people who do. And it's just like, and then you ask yourself, why am I writing poetry? But when I ask myself that question, for me, it's like, I do it because it makes me feel good. And it's a form of expression. It actually uplifts me, it uplifts my mental state. And by doing so, I'm actually adding value to my own life, right? And a lot of things happened for me, especially after I started writing a poem a day. I still make it a habit to do it, just to feel better and get clarity in. And it comes down to other work, or other ideas that I want to explore or build. So what you said actually it adds to it. Like, it's a very different way of looking. What I'm saying is also another element to it. But I think we can both mutually agree to the fact that yes, poetry does make an impact, and it can mean different things for different people. Like for the poet, like you said, what it means to you, and maybe for somebody is just like for a viewer, like when you put your poetry out there, sometimes some people they may not know you, but then they know you via your writing. They don't know who you are as a person, but they know you as the poet. I think that is a lot. Like, that itself is a huge impact already, don't you think?
Yes, I completely agree with you that, on a personal level, you can
Yeah.
connect with like-minded people. Maybe sometimes, I would have friends, or, sometimes random people, strangers, they would be like, oh, thank you so much for writing this. I have been feeling this way, but I'm not able to, I didn't know what exactly I was feeling. And when you wrote it, it was just all there, and that's on a personal level, that is how we make an impact, as poets and as
Yeah.
writers. And it's nice when people can connect, but at the end of the day, it's who I am, and it's what I love to do. And so yeah, and it feels good that when that your emotions resonate with someone from a completely different background, or someone from across the world. And that that it's a very nice feeling. And yeah, I think on a personal level, it does make it an impact.
Every poet has a different purpose. Like, sometimes some people just write a haiku a day, like, and they just
Mm.
write a haiku a day, and they don't have any, they don't want to gain anything, and when I ask them, why do you do that? Like, I just feel good when I write a haiku a day. Or sometimes some people use poetry for activism. Like, you're talking about, especially when we say literature, like you were talking about how the poets of Northeast India, how you're studying them, and how their poetry makes an impact, and that's equally needed. That's such an important part of even history, right? And like, it's shaping the world, their voices and politics. And then there are people who also, like, write, like you have said, like, you write because you're inspired by emotions and psychology to write. And sometimes for me, it's like nature. So we do it because that's like our inspiration. Like, we follow our calling, and we just do it because we are inspired to write. And sometimes not without an end goal, but more like the
Yeah.
process of writing. Just these are just three examples I've given. I'm sure there's a lot more diversity to the concept, but I feel like in that way itself, we are making an impact. And by talking about it today, I think if somebody hears this, and they might, relate to this, and they might be like, okay, this is the reason why I do it. Or maybe, inspired to ask themselves the same question. And like, do you have any like role models or inspirations that you look up to that inspires you in your journey as a creator?
For me, I think the first and foremost, I mean, the most inspiring person in my life, I think, is my grandfather. He is no longer here, sadly, but he has always, he would take us out. I remember he would take us out early morning for a morning walk, and he would, walk. He would pick up litter on his way, and he would collect litter on the roads, and he would, clean it. He would simultaneously take us for a walk and do a bit of cleaning. So that he inculcated in us, I think, in every one of us. the sense of the ethical sense, of caring for the environment, caring for not only your home, but the surroundings outside also. Because sometimes we are so consumed with tidying up our own space, our own private space, but then my grandfather, he taught me that you know your house, it will be clean somehow, some way. You will clean that, but who's going to do the cleaning outside? You can't just neglect it, because you are living and you are part of the society, and you have to clean it. You have to be responsible citizens. And that is the one thing that I would always thank my grandfather for, because he inculcated that sense of to be a responsible human being. On this earth, you have a very short life, and why not make the best of it? And so I would, yeah, my grandfather, he's the true inspiration. And he has such a positive outlook on life also. Sometimes he would have a very bad day, but he would he would not show. He would make everyone around him happy. And I think that is what I also aspire to be, to bring light into the world, even though sometimes it's so hard. But I remember him, and how he faced any challenges in life, and that really inspires me. And in terms of fictional characters, I think I was very much influenced by Sylvia Plath and Virginia Woolf, like I said. And I remember we had this brilliant teacher in St. Xavier's in Calcutta, and she taught us James Joyce, his short story Araby. And the way she taught it, it was so magical. You could feel yourself transported back into that story, and it's as though you're watching the events as they unfold. And I think the teachers and the people around us also, they inspire us. So yeah.